Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming live from Cincinnati, Ohio, here in the United States. Hope everyone is doing themselves well on this 11th of December, 2024. Wasn't here last night because my eyes were burning. I couldn't even see for about a couple hours, so I'm here at it again. Again, with the colder temperatures here in Cincinnati, I have this thing going. I always call it my warm and fuzzy and cozy weather, warm and cozy show. So I'm just gonna sit back and be warm. Hope everybody out there is warm and guess some parts of the country and even the world have hit some downturns in the temperatures, some not as bad as others, except for those in the south, like Florida, who's probably living, is basically doesn't even know what this is right now. I mean, 30 degrees over there is like taboo down there in Florida with all the sunny weather that they have. So, but I hope everyone out there is doing well for this day. Got some new followers I see on my viewership here today. Just give you a brief introduction of what I do. I take all the sports topics, put it on to one platform because this is the way these days. Some of the top ones. And for my new fight followers, I like to talk about historical perspective of the sport because too many people are so much into the recency bias and forget about what some of the past times did to open the paths for some of the current fighters today. Again, everything is subject to opinion. I'm more open to agreement, disagreement, however you have it. Just limit the name calling and threats, please, because I don't partake in that sort of thing. Uh, I guess I have some followers also in the political field. I don't use this platform for it. I will discuss on spaces and keyboarding, but not with this because for many reasons. But glad you guys came along. Hope everyone's doing well. Touch on some things here real quick. Of course, Monday night was the game between Cincinnati and Dallas. The weirdest ending of a game maybe ever. A block punt, Dallas touches it, Cincinnati recovers it, and basically sets up the game-winning touchdown. I mean, the question going into this game, I said it was going to be either two things. Either the Cowboys were going to cowboy or the Bengals were going to Bengal. Seemed like more the Cowboys out-Bengaled the Bengals. I mean, but then again, Jerry Jones is the owner. We know the story there with him. I said a few shows ago, he's getting his karma now for what he did to Jimmy Johnson 3 decades ago. I mean, even Barry Switzer also after they won the Super Bowl in 1996 because he got a Super Bowl, so he no longer cares. I guess he's still trying to come out onto these shows and say whatever the heck it is he wants to say. But it's Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones. What is Jerry Jones going to do at this point? But for the Bengals, don't even think about the playoffs because unless the world falls off the map, you're not getting in. I mean, you guys are celebrating beating Dallas like you guys won the Super Bowl. I mean, this was your Super Bowl. Congratulations. You reveal yourselves as the biggest bunch of douchebags in Cincinnati and across all the social media platforms ever. I mean, beating Dallas is not that big of a deal. I mean, Dallas was 5 and I mean, maybe you can argue maybe damper Dallas's playoff hopes because they were still like that slim, thinner than a hair chance for them to get in the playoffs. But Bengals fans have no room to open their mouths because they carry themselves like a bunch of idiotic morons, whether it be from Cincinnati to all these platforms, to the local TV stations, to the radio stations. I'll get into that name dropping contest once the season is over because it will be over at some point. They're not getting in because you dug your grave week 1 against the Patriots and you're still in that grave. Sorry, if you dig your grave week 1 against the Patriots, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. Miss me with that because we have idiots out here who think they deserve a playoff shot and they don't. And no, I'm not entertaining MVP conversations with your quarterback simply because your team is not good enough to get it done. And he's a part of it. Not all his fault, I get it, but he's a part of the team, so he has to have absolve as much of blame as everybody else does. Period. I don't care about his stats. I mean, the guy threw an intentional interception, which I don't know what the hell he was thinking, but that is what it is at this point, and I'm leaving it. But speaking of, Joe Burrow, the weird situation here in Cincinnati during the game was apparently his house was broken into. I guess some swimsuit model who can't keep her legs closed and her clothes on these garbage sites wants to live in Joe Burrow's house and I guess made the call. Nobody knows what happened. The story is getting weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder every day. Well, first of all, I'm trying to figure out why the hell Joe Burrow would invite a woman who can't keep her clothes on and her legs closed around men into his house. That's problem number one. Problem number two is why would someone resort to this? Wow, he's in Dallas. But the third thing is, who in the heck put together a generic garbage security system for a quarterback who's the highest paid in the NFL who basically can't protect him just like his offensive lineman in Cincinnati can't. I mean, who in the world would allow this while this is going on? While he's doing whatever in Dallas. Someone needs to explain this. I mean, it was here at Anderson Township, about 25 minutes from where I live. I used to live down there. I'm surprised this stuff actually happens in that part of town simply because, it's one of the nicer towns here, especially the eastern side of Cincinnati, where the crime rate is not necessarily all that. Of course, there was a a couple of years back with Joe Mixon, but that turned out to be irrelevant because he was found not guilty. But why are we having this conversation, and why is this happening when somebody is on the other side of the country, you know, trying to win a football game? Reminds me what happened a few weeks ago when 90% of you morons in Cincinnati attacked Zach Taylor's wife on social media after his uh, excuse, regular season Thursday night loss in Baltimore when he was trying to win the game. You guys decided to attack her. Now we're starting to have this. I've always said to you guys, and I've said this when I cover all the sports, the worst fan base I've ever been around wasn't always will be Mike Tyson fans because they acted like this after Buster Douglas beat him in 1990. They acted like this after Evander Holyfield beat him in 96. And they acted like this after Lennox Lewis beat him in 2002. Congratulations, Cincinnati Bengals fans. You found a way to find yourselves to be worse than Mike Tyson fans. I'll gladly put you on the list, and I'll do it officially right now. Your behavior going back to 2010 when you littered Carson Palmer's house to the behavior that took place after the playoff loss to Pittsburgh in 2016. I won't read it. You guys can Google it. It's discussing its behavior. To the way you carry yourselves after losing to Kansas City in 2022, to the way you carry yourselves after losing to New England, to week 1, to the excuses you made to losing to Kansas City week 2, to the excuses and the way you guys carried yourselves attacking Zach Taylor's wife on social media, to this, and I have a feeling it's not going to stop. Congratulations. It's always something here with you guys. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, there's a lot of growing up going on around here, and about 2/3 of you guys are older than me, and I'm freaking 47, and you guys still can't grow up. Newsflash, you're all freaking adults. It's time to grow up a little bit and stop doing the stupid stuff. I try to tell you this. Nobody wants to listen. You guys want to be immature? There's a reason why I sit back and laugh at 90% of the fan bases who go at you for this sort of thing. Now, back to this particular incident. The only good thing that came out of this is there's no MVP trophies, no Lombardi trophies, or Super Bowl rings for the robber to steal. Basically, more than likely went into a blank house. But the biggest misfortune is Joe Burrow, who's a quiet, low-key, humble guy who basically just says his piece and wants to go away and be private. That's been violated in the worst way possible with this. Because now there's going to be a lot of scrutiny going on, and they're starting it here in Cincinnati. And let's see what happens out of this. I mean, there's always something that goes on when it comes to Bengals and Bengals fans and incidents like this. It's just not going to end. But I'll wait till the more details come out because the only question I have is why was there a woman who can't keep her clothes on and her legs closed inside a house for Joe Burrow's house of all places? That's something I'm still trying to wrap my arms around. I thought maybe Joe Burrow would do better than that. But I'll save that for another day. Speaking of confrontational incidents, guess there was some review of some 30 for 30 that's supposed to take place. I don't know who it involves, but I guess the two combatants of this was Mark Gastineau and Brett Favre. The story here is, of course, I guess Mark Gastineau had this, when he played for the New York Jets, had the sack record. And of course, the perception was that Brett Favre conspired to have that record broken by Michael Strahan, who played for the New York Giants. Those who know the story, it was a game, I guess, in 2003 at the end of the season, where it was a botch snap, and I guess Brett Favre tucked in and went down, and Strahan tagged him and got the sack record. And I guess that still lived 2 decades later the head of Mark Gastineau to where he feels like the need to confront Brett Favre. Well, first of all, Mark Gastineau is one of the most ridiculed, filthy human beings to walk God's green earth. We all know this. Not saying Brett Favre is exempt from it because he had his own transgressions on and off the field. I agree with that, but I'm not going to use that platform for it. But Mark Gastineau, 2 decades later, feels like he was slighted because he felt like there was a conspiracy going on against him. Let me remind you, this is a guy who was diagnosed with dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, whatever. Guy was known to be a crazy individual on the field. Of course, he had a willful failure as a boxer for a brief stint because the guy didn't know how to throw punches and win fights to save his life. And now he resorts to this 2.5 decades later because this coveted sack record was broken. Well, first of all, not only was that was broken by Michael Strahan, actually T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers caught it. So if you want to go at someone, you can go at T.J. Watt also. Let's see how that turns out for you, Mark Gastineau. Well, I find it hysterical how you're 68 years old and you're supposed to be enjoying life. And you got a chance to just, meet Brett Favre, and the only thing on your mind is this. It goes back to what I just said a minute ago. There's some gray beards here older than me who just don't know how to grow up and let things go. I mean, there's a reason why they say records are broken. And our knowledge, for his time when he played for the Jets, Mark Gastineau was a problem for offensive linemen. He was one of the better edge defensive linemen when it came to rushing the quarterback. He was very solid. I'll give him that. But why in the hell are you letting something that's basically done and over with still resonate 2 decades later? I mean, did it kill your family? Did they rob you of your bank account? Did your house get burned down? I mean, why are you making a big hubbub of it 2.5 decades later? Grant, I'll admit the play there is going to be always subject to scrutiny, perception-wise, understandably so. But it doesn't absolve the fact the guy actually caught you before that. Remember, it's not that play that got the record broken. Michael Strahan had 22 sacks leading up to that. It was eventually going to at least tie it. And I don't know how he was going to act if he was just tied it. I mean, Strahan caught you at that point. Of course, later on, T.J. Watt of the Steelers got to that number. But you're freaking 68 years old, and if that's the only thing in your mind, I don't know what the hell to tell you. Now, Grant, as I said, I know Brett Favre had his transgressions on and off the field. I'm not using this platform for it. You guys can go ahead. But, I mean, someone needs to tell Mark Gastineau to simply let it go. I mean, there's some things that bother you decades later. I get it. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. But somebody needs to tell Mark Gastineau to just move on from it. I mean, I get the play was worth criticism, understandably so. It at least creates a perception of it. How Favre went down and Strahan just tagged him. But then it didn't help that the right tackle basically got burnt by Strahan, and he was probably going to get to Favre anyways. But, because of how it happened, all the audio that took place, there's always going to be this conspiracy theory that takes place and is being talked about. So I'm not even going to talk about that anymore because it's done and over with. I sort of get why Mark Gastineau was mad, but at some point he just needs to move on from it. Again, Brett Favre has no room to. Brett Favre has little room to speak given his transgressions. Of course, Terrell Owens decides to chime in his 2 cents, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on and an ass to sit on either, so he needs to shut up. That'll take care of all that. Issues over, issues done. Let's all just shut up and move on, especially Terrell Owens, who doesn't know how to shut up to save his life for once. I mean, the guy attacked Stephen A. Smith for no reason at all. I'll get to Terrell Owens another day. Speaking of not being able to move on, 2 hours north from where I live in Columbus, you guys in Ohio State, you continue to make yourselves look like phonies every day. This coming from a fellow Ohio State fan myself. You can't let the loss of Michigan go, can't you? You can't let go of the fact that you guys didn't show up when it mattered, but you choose to show up when the game is over. It's so bad now that a lawmaker wants to promote. I'm going to read this out loud because I'm just now, I just got a chance to register this. I'm not familiar with the name of this. He wants to introduce the OHIO Sportsmanship Act in response to what happened after that game. If you guys don't know, Michigan tried to flag plant. Ohio State got offensive, started fighting for no reason at all. There's rumors of some guy named Derek Moore from Michigan started it. I don't know. I seen the body cam. Everything is out of footage from what I saw. This is from Ohio State Representative Josh Williams, who wants to introduce the OHIO Sportsmanship Act, making flag planting a felony in the state of Ohio. Let me see if I understand this correctly. You want to make planting a flag on the Ohio State banner a felony in Ohio. Let me ask you something this. If Ohio State won a game and they want to plant their own flag on this on that Ohio Stadium, is that a felony on an Ohio State player or an Ohio State fan? You just created a nice little loophole. But let me just say, I just add this real quick. I think that law is going to be dead on arrival. I think it's just absolutely ignorant. But if you're an Ohio State fan or an Ohio State player and you win a game in Columbus and you plant an Ohio State flag on that O in the middle of the 50-yard line, if Ohio State fan does that, is that a felony on an Ohio State player or a fan? I mean, you just created a nice little loophole if you manage to go through with this. It would be the most laughable thing to ever happen in any kind of lawmaker laws in any city, state, country, wherever, if this actually goes through. And I'll be one of the ones to sit home and laugh. I mean, it's bad enough Ohio State fans can't let go of the loss in Michigan because you guys didn't show up when it mattered. It's bad enough Ohio State administration can't let that loss go. It's bad enough Ryan Day doesn't know how to shut up. It's bad enough Jim Knowles doesn't know how to shut up. It's also now bad we got down to this. Boy, did Michigan break you guys bad over the last 4 years. I'm sorry, but they broke you to where this is an issue. Of course, there was a coward named Jack Sawyer out there who wanted to get involved in the action because he felt the need to do whatever he felt necessary. Newsflash. If you guys didn't want any of that to happen, win the game. You guys didn't. You guys got what you deserved. And the fact you resorted to this, I mean, this speaks more volumes than anything else. Now, one of my followers I follow actually made a good point. I think something like this should be swifter punishment for players and coaches for both sides on any team or anywhere in any college football game. But I think $100,000 fine for both Ohio State and Michigan was just a smack on the wrist. Actually, lighter than that. But if you don't want any kind of flag planting on your field, win the game. It's plain and simple. Ohio State didn't want to win the game. They let Michigan come in there, basically dog walk them. They're lucky Michigan didn't have a quarterback for their offense because, they basically, Khalil, can't pronounce the guys. Khalil Mullings ran anytime he wanted to, basically averaged close to 4 yards of carry, ran up and down the field on you. Your biggest luck out was Michigan didn't have a real pass game to challenge you. And it's bad enough Denzel Burke had the penalty to set up the lone touchdown, who basically been toasted all year long. And there's a reason why you guys are the laughingstock. Not just the way you guys lost to Michigan, the way you guys carry yourselves after the loss to Oregon, and the way you carry yourselves now, you're still not letting go any of this. You guys got Tennessee coming up in 8 days. Tennessee's playing pretty darn well right now. They're going to go into your turf. You guys have your hands full coming up in about 10 days. See, next Saturday night, primetime game. You guys want a primetime game? You got it, so shut up. You guys got Tennessee going onto your turf, and Tennessee's playing pretty darn well right now. You better get it together and think about Tennessee and quit worrying about what the hell Michigan did on your field, because you're fixing to get eliminated in the college playoff if you don't. Because Tennessee's playing pretty darn good football right now. I'll acknowledge that. I mean, what can you say? Those I know the Vols fans are some wild, crazy animals themselves, but I'll tell you this: you lose to Tennessee at home, they're going to give it to you worse than Michigan fans did, and I'm just going to sit back and laugh. I'm going to say because you guys are still having Michigan living rent-free in your heads because you guys are so soft and sensitive to some of the most inhumane stuff walking God's green earth, and you feel the need to get defensive and defiant over some of the most silliest stuff to ever come across God's green earth. And I thought I had to deal with Bengals fans. I guess it trickles over to Columbus with Ohio State fans. It's just a 2-hour drive up from Columbus to Cincinnati both ways off Interstate 71. I think a 2-hour drive could be that contagious in terms of sensitivity. But I'll just leave that as it is. You got Tennessee in 10 days. Shut up. Worry about Tennessee. Quit worrying about what the hell Michigan did, because they beat you. They gave it to you. You got what you deserved. It's over. Move on. You're in the playoff. Now to speaking of college football, news came out that the legendary Bill Belichick is supposedly closing out a deal with the University of North Carolina. I know the guy said he wants to come back to coaching, but I'm not even sure why he would come back to college coaching. I mean, this is real interesting. Of course, the whole hubbub during that Belichick-Brady dynasty is always going to be who was the reason the dynasty happened. Was it Belichick? Was it Brady? I guess Belichick wants to show the whole world he could do something of significance after, Tom Brady left for Tampa Bay. I think it was before the 2020 season. And of course, Brady goes on to win the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, have success in his down in Tampa Bay. I'm just curious where this is going to go. I mean, I don't know much about the North Carolina football program. I mean, they had their moments good and bad in recent, since the turn of the century. They've had, they've flirted with the college football playoff ranking when it was the old BCS a couple times before I remember. But where are we going to go with Bill Belichick coaching a college team? I mean, I'm not going to say he's not going to be successful. I mean, Bill Belichick's been successful everywhere he went, from a special teams coach with the Giants to eventually being the defensive coordinator, winning 2 Super Bowls with New York, having Lawrence Taylor and coach under the great Bill Parcells. And of course, we know about the Patriot dynasty. Had success in Cleveland until Art Modell decided to be a coward and take the team out of Cleveland. But I don't know where he's going to go with this. Of course, the only success he has right now is dating someone who's young enough to be his granddaughter. I mean, 3 times younger than him. I mean, 72 divided by 3 is 24. No, that's exactly 3 times. But sort of weird news. I know the guy probably has a passion for coaching, and nobody's going to dispute that. I mean, the guy finds ways to win. I mean, I know the last few years in New England was after Brady left was absolutely a downturn because Robert Kraft is an egotistical idiot who was unappreciative of the Brady Belichick dynasty and didn't allow Bill Belichick to continue to succeed after Tom Brady left. But I think Belichick wants to try to prove something that he could be as successful as a head coach without having guys like under Bill Parcells and of course having Tom Brady as quarterback as it did for New England. That's the only conclusion I could come up with. Just a weird set of news here. I mean, I thought maybe he would go to an NFL team to try and win a Super Bowl to say he can win one without Tom Brady. But then again, what situation is there good for him to win? I mean, if he was going to go through a rebuild, I guess he might as well go to college. That's the only thing I can think of. Just strange news all around here in the NFL world or the football world when it comes to this. Now to guess we know the baseball hot stove is coming in. We know the big news yesterday was Juan Soto signing that stupid contract. Good luck down there in New York. But I think the Yankees made a nice little move yesterday where they got Max Fried from the Braves. 70-plus game winner with a career ERA of 3. Not too shabby. I mean, they need another pitcher. I mean, outside of Garrett Cole, what do they have? I mean, I know some Yankees fans are smarting over the Juan Soto going to the Mets. But as I said yesterday, give it 3 years. You guys are going to be fine because Juan Soto is going to be a middle-of-the-pack player at some point because he's going to have to try live to that ridiculous contract, and his career numbers don't even back up the fact that he deserved it. Now, I know he basically gambled on himself. He turned down a $450 million contract someplace. I forgot where it was. I'm going to say it was Texas to get this in New York. But to Max Fried and the Yankees, I think it's a solid pickup. I thought they needed another arm to help out Garrett Cole. They got the richest contract for a left-handed starting pitcher. Don't know if I would have paid that much. But, of course, it's now the baseball market. As we know, baseball, unlike football and basketball, doesn't have a salary cap. And, of course, the big market teams and small market teams, there's always this up fighting over spending and competition. But it goes to show if you're willing to spend the right money on the right resources, you're going to net results. I think the Yankees, I thought, got a solid grab out of this. They still have to fix that rotation because past them two, they basically have nothing. But they're probably going to need another arm of the rotation at some point. Maybe need to deepen their bullpen because that bullpen was just beaten up like a drum by the Dodgers in the World Series. Of course, didn't help Aaron Boone mismanaged it. Of course, the perception is going to be because they feel like Brian Cashman didn't want to pony up the dollars to keep Juan Soto. This was a, Band-Aid, cover up for it. I thought it was a solid pickup. I mean, you can get a guy who has won had 73 career wins and a career ERA of 3. You got something right. I mean, the pitching staff still has work to do because that rotation still past those two is still very hit and miss. But I think the Yankees did the right here. I mean, I'd rather spend it on something like this than a guy like Juan Soto, who's basically going to plateau in the next couple of years anyways with that ridiculous contract. Because when you get paid the money he's about to get paid, there's going to be pressure to honor it. And he's going to basically come down to earth a little bit. And in the next couple of years, I'll be coming back to you guys and saying, I told you that you guys should be happy all along, be happy that Juan Soto is no longer on your team. I'll be telling you guys that in a couple of years. I don't have a real fan interest in the New York teams, but I see all the hubbub, the fighting between the Yankees and Mets fans, because Mets fans all of a sudden think they're going to win 20-some-odd 10 World Series since they signed Juan Soto. Yeah, when was the last time you won anything was because a ball went between Bill Buckner's legs. That's the only reason why you won, was because a ball went in between Bill Buckner's legs. That's it. Nothing more than that. You guys had talent. You threw it down the tubes. I expect you to do the same. The Mets to do the same thing the next 5 years when it comes to Juan Soto. Just watch. I'll come back to this later. Now speaking of what's going on in 10 days, I talked about the college football playoff between Tennessee and Ohio State. Some of the other games also. Big fight earlier in the day taking place in Saudi Arabia. training camp. Got a chance to see the footage of the training camp of Oleksandr Usyk as he gets ready to beat Tyson Fury again, which he is going to do. I said this about Oleksandr Usyk and everybody in the fight game. I'll say this again. Maybe the most loose champion maybe I've seen in a long, long time. Because when he goes in the training camp, I mean, he's focused, but he's also loose. I mean, he's not uptight. He's not uptight. He's not nervous. He's not any, no butterflies in him. Just loose. I mean, he's just dancing away inside the boxing ring, preparing for Tyson Fury with some moronic idiot. I don't know who the hell that was. Feel the need to dance along with him. But Oleksandr Usyk, the build up from all the way back to the first fight, and even during the second fight, his confidence is so surreal. It's almost psychological to the casual fan to think what he's really thinking. I mean, Tyson Fury, everybody knows Tyson Fury likes to play mind games with fighters. I mean, he did it with Deontay Wilder. He did it with Vladimir Klitschko. He had success because they were, you see what's, you call him mentally weak, have at it. I'm not going that far. But if there's one fighter that can match the mind game for mind game, the psychological for psychological part of this game, especially in the press conferences or the build up for a fight like this, if there is one fighter that can match up with Tyson Fury, it's Oleksandr Usyk. He did it in the first fight. He's doing it here again. And come 10 days, I fully expect him to be ready to defend his real heavyweight championship, not the fake belt Daniel Dubois has, the real heavyweight championship, and successfully defeat Tyson Fury in 10 days over at Saudi Arabia. I will be talking more about that as time comes along. I will be reading about it for my fight followers. I will use the social media platforms to talk and discuss Fury Usyk during the fight, round by round coverage. I'll probably chime in more on the week of the fight because when fight week comes up, the buildup is going to be surreal because we know how the mind games like to be. I said this all along. You're not going to out mind game Oleksandr Usyk because he has a subtle way when it comes to buildup and when it comes to the mind games, just doing something just enough to basically show he's not going to be intimidated or rattled or you're not going to get to his head. Nothing fancy. He doesn't have to talk much. He doesn't have to wear a freaky costume. He doesn't have to resort to drug use like Tyson Fury did. Just little stuff. And I expect him to do the same thing this week on fight week. That's why I'm leaning toward him in the rematch. Final prediction will probably be the Friday before the fight. Now, speaking of the fight game and, of course, all-time athletes, before I get to this, I just want to touch on something I read earlier. I saw some moron who felt the need to put his top 10 athletes of all time. I saw glaring admissions of guys like Joe Montana, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Muhammad Ali. He's on this guy's top 10. First of all, I'm not entertaining this idiot because I'll get to him when the time comes. But at least to the topics I'm going to talk about here, because it was on this day, start with this, on this day 69 years ago, the official end of the career of the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, Sugar Ray Robinson. It was at a ring in New York City when he was in the ring, 4 standout opponents, Carmen Basilio, Gene Fulmer, Randy Turpin, and Bobo Olson were in the ring to congratulate him for one of the most all-time great careers ever. As I said, widely regarded as the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. I mean, the record, his style, everything speaks for itself. I mean, 5 times a world middleweight champ, also won a welterweight title. Fought Joey Maxson for the light heavyweight title. Had the fight won. The only reason why he lost was because he was about to die due to heat exhaustion because it was relatively hot at Yankee Stadium when that fight happened. But Sugar Ray Robinson's, place in history, it's been chronicled about 1 million times. I could chronicle it another 1 million times. Widely regarded the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. And there hasn't been anybody I've ever seen that has come remotely close. A lot of people want to say Roy Jones. Nope. A lot of people are going to say Floyd Mayweather. Nope. A lot of people are going to say Manny Pacquiao. Nope. Terrence Crawford. Nope. Canelo Alvarez. Nope. Julio Cesar Chavez. I love him, but nope. Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. Nope. Even Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis, close as they could possibly be, but no. His record speaks for itself. His history speaks for itself. The 6-fight series with Jake LaMotta, had great rivalries with guys like Carmen Basilio, Bobo Olson, just to name several. I can go on and on about his career resume, his career accolades. but bar none, the greatest pound for pound fighter of all time, and it's probably gonna have that distinction probably after a lot of us leave this earth and beyond. I mean, when you pull up the history books, it's going to be Sugar Ray Robinson all over the place. Too many of you guys get caught up in the recency bias, thinking these guys, because they go undisputed in multi-belt eras, and you guys have love for belts over fighters, that you think they deserve to be in the conversation. Let me remind you guys again, when Sugar Ray Robinson won these belts, it was the one belt era where one belt winner takes all. Did that 6 times in 2 weight classes. I mean, what can you say? I mean, when he went after he lost to Maxim, he came back and demolished Bubba Olson to regain the middleweight championship. And not only demolished him, I mean, he just beat the brakes off of him. Beat the brakes off of him in 2 rounds when he regained it. They had a rematch with him. Beat the brakes off of him in 4 rounds in that fight. But Ray Robinson was one of those guys, checks all the boxes in terms of his style, especially when it comes to speed, ring generalship, fluidity, the beauty, the elegance that he brought to the ring. That was Sugar Ray Robinson. I mean, his last fight won a decision. Archie Foster or something like that. Can't ring a bell. But Sugar Ray Robinson, greatest pound for pound fighter of all time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Say what you want to say. I don't. If I see these all time great pound for pound, listen, I'm not saying Sugar Ray Robinson number one. I'm not entertaining it. Don't even try it. Speaking of another greatest who retired on this day, it was 43 years ago when Muhammad Ali fought his last fight against Trevor Berbick in the Bahamas. Different set of circumstances, but you know, okay, again, anybody knows this fight, like this loss of Larry Holmes, had no business taking place. But what can you say? Ali just wanted to go out on his own terms. You know, the fight was basically dreadful to watch. I mean, not even worth talking about. Berbick wins the 10-round decision. But still, Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time. People still want to bring up Holmes and Berbick as a way to diminish Ali's legacy. Let me remind you, anybody with a functioning brain knows Muhammad Ali shouldn't have been fighting after he beat Leon Spinks in the rematch. Some people could say he shouldn't be fighting after he won the third fight against Joe Frazier back in '75 in the Thrilla of Manila. I understand that. But he came back to Spinks. Really, his end was when he beat Spinks to become the lineal 3-division heavyweight champion of the world. Not win belts like Daniel Dubois. Lineal 3-belt heavyweight champ, the man of all men. One belt, winner takes all, did it 3 times as the champ in the heavyweight division in 1978. When he captured, in 1964 when he beat Sonny Liston, 74 when he beat George Foreman, 78 when he beat Leon Spinks. Lineal champ, not belt. Champion. There's a difference. You guys in the boxing community need to get that. But it was his last fight. It was against Trevor Berbick. Shouldn't have taken place. You know, Ali just like the Holmes fight, Ali couldn't do anything. But of course, Trevor Berbick wasn't necessarily the second, coming of Sugar Ray Robinson either. You know, he got the decision win in the Bahamas. Fight's not even talked about because when you think of Ali's greatness, if it's basically well chronicled time after time. I mean, anything he said he did. From beating Liston the first time to getting his paybacks on Frazier and Norton to Rumble in the Jungle against George Foreman in '74, probably his finest hour. Thriller in Manila, the third Frazier fight. Of course, the 2 fights with Leon Spinks. But the greatest of all time in the heavyweight division, the only one that comes close is Joe Louis. But maybe we talk about sports aura. The top 10 athletes of maybe ever when it comes to sports aura. When you saw this guy, the guy had aura, whether it be on and off the field or on and off the ring. In Ali's case, Muhammad Ali had it. Case in point was the '96 Olympics when he lit the torch. In game 1 of the '97 finals between Utah and Chicago, when he entered the United Center, the house that Michael Jordan built, he blew the roof off. The same house Michael Jordan built, and Michael Jordan was in that same building. Muhammad Ali blew the roof off. Told you the aura and the greatness of Muhammad Ali had. Again, nobody talks about this fights with Berbick, rightfully so, because it's basically etched in history, and it's basically one that belongs in there in the fireplace, burnt because it's not a part of Ali's legacy. If you still think that's a part of Ali's legacy, as the late Roger Mayweather would say, you don't know expletive about boxing. So, and of course, Berbick had that fight. course, later on to fight Mike Tyson, got dog walked for 2 rounds. We know what happened with that. Now to speaking of wild legacy fights and wild rivalries, we always talk about with all sports. In boxing, we have a boatload of them. Ali Frazier, Holyfield Bowe, Barrera Morales, Robinson Lamada, Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott. Maybe this one needs to be talked about more in that conversation because these 4 fights were wild, especially this 4th fight. This was Bobby Chacon and Bazooka Limon that took place 42 years ago. Again, for you guys in the fight community who brag about spending money on these platforms, this fight, 1982, was free TV, ABC, wide world of sports, spanning the globe, thrill of victory, agony of defeat. Of course, when you think of agony of defeat, the skier going down the hill, tumbling off the rails in the intros. That's ABC Wide World of Sports. Free, not have to spend a dime. This was the 4th and final meeting between Bobby Chacon and Bazooka Limon. The lifestyle of Bobby Chacon was absolutely wild. I mean, basically, the more he stepped into the ring, the more it broke his family from how I understood it. Because it turned out his family was begging him to retire after Limon beat him the 3rd time in 1980. And Limon just wanted to, Chacon. And Chacon just wanted to go on. And when she found out that Chacon wanted to go on, turned out she took her own life. Again, I'm not going to use this platform to go into details, but it's worth bringing up because Bobby Chacon's basically lived one of those real edgy, wild, insane, off the hook lifestyles in and out of the ring that basically started to have a wrinkle effect on everybody around him. But for this 4th fight, this wild rivalry he had with Bazooka Limon, which was the 1982 fight of the year, he gassed it up for one last time, and basically in a wild affair, back and forth both ways. I mean, both guys just let it all hang out. Chacon found a way to get the decision win and become the world super featherweight champion. Great fight both ways, action packed. If you like action fights, it's on all these platforms in the YouTube, Rumble, all these videos. It's on there. It's a must watch. This rivalry doesn't get talked about much because neither Chacon or Limon became, truly the upper echelon all-time greats. I mean, they fought a bunch of them. Chacon's case, he fought the great Ruben Oliveras twice and Alexis Arguello. Limon fought Chacon, Camacho, Chavez, among many others. I'll divulge here in a second. This fight was the epitome of what an all-Mexican war was. I mean, maybe not the level that Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales had, but it was pretty darn close. Just largely because Barrera and Morales had higher statures in Mexican boxing history, and Chacon and Limon never got to that level. But a great epic 4-fight series, and that 4th fight was basically give and take both ways. Till Chacon just found a way to wear out Limon, floored him late in the fight, and it turns out that knockdown was a difference in the fight, which won him the super featherweight championship. Because without the knockdown, we're having a draw, and then who knows what would happen. But in the sense of Bobby Chacon, he wanted this moment for one last time to hear the words, and the new champion of the world. Bobby Chacon wanted to go hell and high water, sacrifice everything he loved to get to that point one last time, and he did it 42 years ago today against Bazooka Limon. Now, of course, this was the end game really for, honestly, this was the end game for both fighters. Chacon was forced to vacate the title because the mandatory contender was Hector Camacho, and for some reason, Chacon didn't want to go to Puerto Rico to fight Camacho in his backyard because, as we know, money talks, and there was more money to be made. Chacon didn't want to partake, so he vacated the belt. Limon gets the shot at Camacho. Camacho blitzes him in 5 rounds, which honestly, I think Camacho could have blitzed Chacon also, because as I said, this 4th fight with Chacon and Limon was the end game for a wild 4-fight rivalry from the back end of the 70s to the early 80s. The 1982 fight of the year was the 4th Chacon-Limon fight. For Bazooka Limon, he never able to capture this point again. He lost to Camacho, eventually lost to Chavez, and he basically just, like all fighters, continue on way well past his best days. Maybe his point in 1990 when he had a free TV fight against Sharmba Mitchell, where Mitchell was given a boxing lesson, and Bazooka Limon felt the need to embarrass himself to just yank the trunks of Sherman Mitchell to try and stop himself from being stopped because Mitchell was just delivering it to him. You know, two very exciting must-watch TV fighters, Bobby Chacon, Bazooka Limon. Both guys who, when you turn on the TV, you were getting your money's worth. Bobby Chacon was trying to get one last shot of glory, and he got it. What more can you say? Because every fighter wants to hear that new phrase when they get a chance to fight for a title. They want to hear the official result and the new champion of the world. Bobby Chacon sacrificed basically everything in and out of the ring just so he can hear this for one last time. Boxing was deep in Bazooka's. Boxing was deep in Bobby Chacon's blood. I mean, he had, epic fights all over the place. You talk about the 4-fight series with Limon, a couple of them with Cornelius Boza Edwards. One of them, I believe, was a Fight of the Year candidate. He fought Alexis Arguello, Ray Mancini. The 2 fights with Ruben Olivares, a top 5 Mexican fighter of all time. But the sacrifice Bobby Chacon made to get to that level one last time in 1982 when he beat Bazooka Limon to show the passion, the persistence that he had, willing to sacrifice everything he loved just to hear the words one last time and the new champion of the world. That was all he wanted. I mean, he had a hard time living down losing the 3rd fight to Limon because he had some turbulences in and out of the ring. His family wanted him to quit. Chacon wouldn't listen. Of course, it drove a girlfriend to commit suicide because of it, because she was begging and Chacon wouldn't listen. Turned out also on the phone call, Chacon's mom was calling him the same thing, telling him he needs to retire. Bobby Chacon was just driven to win back what he felt was rightfully his. That was the super featherweight championship of the world, and he did it 42 years ago today. Again, this Chacon-Limon rivalry, not talked about amongst the elite rivalries ever, but for its time, it was certainly one that got you watching the TV. Very action-packed, free TV on ABC Wide World of Sports, I might add. Must-watch rivalry. Basically, not the level of a Pereira Morales. Maybe something like a slightly less version of what Gaddy Ward was. Both guys were been on their downturn, but for the 4-fight series, when they got at it, all action was given. So, kudos to both. I mean, what can you say? That 4th fight, of course, was a fight of the year in '82, and Bazooka Limon and Bobby Chacon just put loads of excitement. They say sometimes we get rivalries. 2 fighters were made for each other. 2 teams are made for each other. I could bring up a whole bunch of them. For that time, in those lower weight classes, Bobby Chacon and Bazooka Limon were genuinely made for one another, because when they went at it in the 4 fights, I mean, they went at it. The 4th fight was basically an all-out war where neither guy was the same ever again. And what more do you want? Sometimes I wish we could have fights like this again, where we can say both guys just let it all hang out, because we haven't seen that in recent years, haven't we? I mean, it's sort of a pitiful shame. So, boy, do I miss those days. I mean, I just have to remind people, these young guns again, because they brag about spending money on these streaming platforms. Let me remind you, I bring up what I had to grow up to watch, because this was ABC's Wide World of Sports. If you guys know ABC Wide World of Sports, it was the spanning of the globe, bringing you multi-years of excitement, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. Of course, the agony of defeat, when you talk about the ABC Wide World of Sports intro, was the skier coming down, tumbling over the hill. And that's still the image that resonates when you think of ABC Wide World of Sports. But they had all-time great fights on that particular network. They showed all-time great replays of that network. That was the premier replay network for closed-circuit boxing, because they replayed the Duran-Leonard fight in Montreal. They were actually live for the Duran-Leonard 2 No Mas in Louisiana. Replayed the 81 classic between Leonard Hearns. Had multiple fights in the 70s, especially when it featured Ali and Foreman, commentated by the great Howard Cosell. Of course, it later on to a hip sensation where you get multi-fight cards on ABC Wide World of Sports on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. The tipping point was 79, what a doubleheader featured Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. Not these platforms you have to pay $1 for, but one you just turn on the TV, play with the bunny ears, maybe put some aluminum foil on those antennas just to get the TV to work to avoid the static. But that was what it was back in those days. Boy, do I miss it. And those fights back then, let me remind you, some of those fights back then that was replayed on ABC Wide World of Sports, you'd have to probably break the bank to pay for because those were high-level fights you basically could watch for free. I mean, they replayed the Mike Tyson Michael Spinks fight in '88 also on top of it. That should tell you something right there. And everybody knows Tyson Spinks in '88 was the moneymaker of its time. Boy, do I miss those days so much. I do everything I can to turn back the clock and watch those. Especially today, where I got you, where maybe some of these fight fans who are not happy with having to pay dollars to watch fights. Just remind you what had to live back then. It was a thing of beauty. Too bad those days are gone. But it's always nice to relive them. And on that note, I will wrap up this Wednesday night edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful rest of the 11th of December, 2024. So I kept this thing going through the whole show. As long as I ever had this thing lasted. Actually, I'll tell you the rest of the story before I wrap this up. Back in 2003, when we had no electric, it was stone cold ice, snow, ice, no electric. I had to live off of this for a week. I literally had to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner on this for a week. Think about that. I don't know how the hell I survived, but here I am. I must have done something right during that time. But I'm glad the thing is here because it saved my money when it comes to paying my heating bill. The furnace doesn't kick. But that will wrap it up. Hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful 11th of December 2024. And as always, I say this to everyone in all communities, love or hate, make self-care a number one priority because taking care of yourself first matters over anything and everything else you do in any walk of life. Until then, I will be back tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of the night. Take care, and God bless.